Welcome back to another edition of Racing Rundown here on YouTube. I'm Eric DeCoster, and it's been a while since I last was on the Racing Rundown YouTube. Obviously, me and Jack were both in school. We both have jobs, things like that. So, it's been busy. It's been busy times, to say the least. Of course, if you're a regular podcast listener, you still hear us every week, which is a good thing. Hope if you're not one, you become one, because we've been putting out a lot of good stuff on Kentucky Derby Trail, regular racing. We have Saudi Cup coming up. So a lot of good things, but also YouTube. Going to be, we're really going to be picking that back up as well. Derby Power 5 coming up, Kentucky Derby individual previews, which is probably my favorite thing that we do every year. Those will be coming out after those final preps a couple months from now. So lots of good. So happy to be back on YouTube, of course, in addition to our weekly podcast. And in this episode, as you can tell by the title, we're diving into the Grade 2 Rachel Alexandra from Fairgrounds on their very big card. Final prep for the Fairgrounds Oaks, although this race extremely productive. Plenty of Kentucky Oaks winners out of this race over the years. A lot of people think it should be a Grade 1, which is crazy to say for a prep race, but I don't necessarily disagree because it's been productive and it looks no different this year. $300,000 purse, mile and a 16th, 11 very talented fillies going postward for some high-profile connections. As usual, if this is your first time joining us, we'll be going through each and every horse one by one, profiling them, what we like, what we don't like, and at the end of the day, I always say it, we're just here to help you pick a winner more so than give our full-fledged thoughts on how we think the race will go and who we like the most. More so trying to help and inform. So we'll start with the one, Lacrete, the winner of the lead into this race, the Silver Bullet Day, now 2-for-2 lifetime for Steve Asmussen. She's related to Clairiere, of course, the Kentucky Oaks prep winner last year, ran very well in the Oaks herself. Very talented filly for these same connections. And Lacrete, kind of a different horse, a lot like her mother, I'd say, in cavorting. Doesn't seem like that big-bodied, strong type that wants to run for a long time, like Clairiere. Lacrete, I think, is probably, these are her distances. I think that the mile and 16th, that's where she wants to do her running, and that's, of course, what she gets to do again here. Did mention she's 2-for-2 undefeated, and that last win in the Silver Bullet Day was impressive because she went out, set the pace, didn't go too quick, but backed out heading into the stretch, and then came back at Fannie and Freddie, motor down, and was able to get the job done. It was a very, very impressive win for a horse that looked beaten. And I think she also relished, the little bit longer the race went, but I did previously say I don't think she necessarily wants to run all day. But these mile and a 16th, eventually mile and an 8th, will be up her sleeve. She's going to definitely be a factor in the pace early on. She's been on the lead in her first two races. In addition to the fact she has drawn the rail, so you kind of have to send from that spot. So it'll be interesting to see how Joel Rosario handles that. I think there's a couple horses that'll soften her up just enough, and there's definitely tougher in here, and I think that's the biggest thing you have to consider, because if we were running the Silver Bullet Day with a couple more allowance horses coming in, you could have some confidence picking her. She'd probably go off favorite in here, but when you'll see there's a couple graded stakes winners, graded stakes placed runners that we haven't touched on yet that'll easily take more money. So if you like her, you're going to find some great value because she'll probably be third or fourth choice at post time. The 2 is North County, another undefeated one, 3-for-3 in her career for Brendan Walsh, and won the lead into the Silver Bullet Day, so 2 races back from this 4-race series. The Untappable on the day after Christmas last year, 3-for-3, as I mentioned, 2 impressive wins. One was on the grass, one was an off-the-turf race, second start at Keeneland, and then finally that win in the Untappable, pulling off a minor upset, also beating Fannie and Freddie in the process. Other than her debut, she's ran some pretty strong numbers in her dirt races, those last 2 starts, which is obviously a very good thing. Those numbers actually are better than what Lacrete has posted in her career. If that gives you any indication what the series has posted so far. And, this is one that she's ran this distance before. She's won at it, did some impressive things. And obviously that last win was strong, beating Fannie and Freddie. And I think, Fannie and Freddie is not here, but it's a feather in the cap of this horse to have beaten Fannie and Freddie, and then Fannie and Freddie come back and run a really big race in her next start to Lacrete. So I think those 2, the first 2 that we've touched on, are pretty evenly matched, all things considered. Interesting to see how North County comes, hasn't ran in two months in total. That's got to be something she overcomes. And, of course, the tougher horses. I think, personally, there's a little bit better in here, but I wouldn't think it's a bad idea if you're to pick her over a horse like Lacrete, because I think it's reasonable to say maybe North County's shown a little bit more to this point in her career. The 3 is one of a couple shippers in here from Southern California, Miss Maddie B, 4 Bob Hess, 1 win in 5 starts, 2/3 to go along with it. And it's very weird looking at her running lines because you see what that 1 win, which was a blowout win on the grass at Del Mar, and those 3 other losses, she hasn't been anywhere near the front end when the wire came. So I don't know, but she is a little bit better, I think, than the running lines state, and here's why. First 3 starts all sprinting, not excellent. You look at that pedigree; she's bitonalist, out of Medagliadoro mare. She wants to run all day. So when she got up to 2 turns for the first time, she clearly excelled, closed from far back on the Del Mar turf course. Pace was set up for her, but nevertheless, she was still able to take a big step forward from those first 2 losses and won by almost 4 lengths. Next time out, she's in a really tough Santa Ynez, cutting back to 1 turn, 7 furlongs there, and then runs third, but she's beaten 7 1/4 lengths. I do like her stretching back out here. I think that's going to push her forward a little. Her figures have not been bad from her last 3 races. I'm not a big fan of Mike Smith on a horse with this kind of running style, but I think it's good that she has consistency. The rider that broke her maiden does get back aboard here. So she's not bad. This is another case where I think there's better in here. I thought the standing in showed that, but expect some improvement as she gets out to 2 turns. All in all, though, I think the water's a bit too deep. The 4 is Dreamlith, the winner of the Goldenrod last time out. She was 9-1 that day. Honestly, think you're going to get around the same price. I don't think she's going to take a ton of money in this spot, despite being a Grade 2 winner in her very last start. Haven't seen her in 3 months, so how she handles that layoff will be something. And just all in all in her career, you'd look at it and say hit or miss, but her 2 losses, the Spinaway, she's a 2-turn horse. That's kind of the first thing we have to establish. But the Spinaway, going 1 turn, she was never going to excel there. And also getting beat by Echo Zulu. Going 1 turn, Echo Zulu's always going to beat you. Second time in Grade 1 company in the Alcibiades, runs 5th, makes up a lot of ground late, but the race just didn't set up for her. You watch that race back, it didn't work out. Goldenrod, she was able to put it all together on a track that catered more to her style, closed into a slow pace, and looked really, really good. Posted a career high number. First time blinkers, that could have definitely moved her forward. So lot of positives from that last run. I think you can maybe question what she beat. Was it really all that? It was definitely a step down from her races in Grade 1 company before that. So, what was it? What was the factor there? Was it gaining the confidence after running against tougher horses, going up against the two big ones I'd say she beat in the Goldenrod and saying, oh, this is actually pretty easy? Or was it she completely turned it around, adding the blinkers, things like that? That remains to be seen. I think the race sets up nicely for her. I think she's one you got to look at underneath at a minimum. Just depends how likely you are to put her on top. I think that, in my personal opinion, I think there's a couple that are a little bit better, which is why I'm not putting her on top, but she's one I'm going to use underneath for sure, and probably not one you leave off of multi-race tickets as well. The 5 is Divine Huntress for Grand Motion. Not too often we see Grand Motion shipping one into Fairgrounds, so interesting to see her here. You look at her work tab, she did post a work at Fairgrounds last time, and that was a little interesting, or Tampa, excuse me. She's supposed to work at Tampa, and that was interesting because obviously Tampa had a Kentucky Oaks prep themselves last time. So I don't know if she was supposed to run there or not. Definitely kind of weird that she shipped from Maryland to Pennsylvania to Florida and now here. Don't know what it means, but she's been impressive when she's actually raced. Her last 2 starts have been wins. Only 1 start for Grand Motion. She was with a Mid-Atlantic based trainer for her first 2 starts. Debut, really good race to finish third, beating 2 lengths. Go back and watch that. She had no business running as well as she did. Then breaks her maiden in start number 2, and then start number 3. First start promotion. First start going 2 turns. Very comfortably, won by 12 lengths. But I think there's questions. Obviously, the talent's not there. You have to obviously look at Park Shippers with a grain of salt. If you follow the Derby Trail up in New York, you'll see Park Shippers, and some of them sink, some of them swim. But when the waters get deeper, that's when you definitely start to see them sink. And I think that'll be the case here. I think that win was pretty good at face value last time out. But the more you look at it, slow time. She wasn't exactly powering home. Very tough race to really make your stakes debut and things like that. I just think there's better in here. I think that she'll have to prove me wrong if she wants to win, because unless you can really take that Parks form and say, hey, I'm going to disregard all the numbers and everything and go with her, that's fine. I have no problem with that if you're going to go with her off a visual, perspective. But when I analyze this, I just think there's stronger in this race. 6 is Candy Raid. It was a big long shot last time out in the Silver Bullet Day. Ran 4th, beating only 3.5 lengths. And I think that was encouraging, given she was such a long shot. She's She's had a weird career to this point, to say the least. 2 wins in 8 out of 8 runs, and her losses, she's been destroyed in all but really that Silver Bullet day. I mean, she was a head away from finishing third, but I think it was she was clearly beaten that day by 2 horses who are good in Lacrete and Fannie and Freddie. But once again, I've said it with a lot of horses so far. We're getting into deeper waters, and this isn't one I think has a big chance in here. It's not like a pace breakdown will benefit her more than it would benefit some of the other closers in here with a more realistic shot like a Dreamlet. So I think she's an easy fade as we go on into this race. The 7, Turner Loose for Brad Cox. Of course, we know what Brad Cox can do with his fillies. Plenty of good ones over the years. And not what we usually see him come into this race with. 4 starts for Turner Loose, all on grass. And she won her first 2, was the 4-5 favorite in the Jessamine at Keeneland, ran third that day. Is still center to Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. Went out, set the pace, and faded badly late. Finished last, beating almost 10 lengths on the day. And it's hard. It's hard to get a good read on her because we've never seen her go on dirt. The work tab isn't necessarily blowing you away, suggesting that she is a good dirt horse. I think there might be a reason that she was on turf throughout her career. Who knows? I don't know. There's a lot of questions around it. But I think when you look at her pedigree, 2 turns on the dirt is kind of what she wants to do. So for that's a big positive. And she'll also be mixing it up on the front end. She has a lot of early speed, and you'll see it. She'll go up and contend with the likes of Lacrete. So I don't know. I don't have enough faith in her looking at her turf form to be like, yes, she can definitely translate that to the dirt here. I think if it was a different spot, maybe I'd be more confident. If I had one dirt run and it was a good second, I probably would have considered her a little bit more. But there's just not a lot to go off here unless we're projecting, she'll really take that step forward switching surfaces. And I just don't see it yet. Happy to let her beat me, though. And if she does beat me, I'll have no problems with it. The 8 is Goddess of Fire for Todd Pletcher. Only win was her maiden effort at Saratoga on August 22nd. 3 losses since then, all in stakes company. And the 2, as a 2-year-old, were not great. She was beaten a combined 22.5 lengths, never really close. Then last time out in the Gasparilla, made up some good ground, beaten 3/4 of a length by a nice horse of Bill Mott's in Out Fox. I do think she gets a little better, stretching back out in distance. She was third in the Pocahontas, so she is graded stakes place, but this is another situation of she hasn't shown me enough, really, at any point in her career to suggest this is the race she puts it over the top. Todd Pletcher's been struggling in recent years shipping into fairgrounds. That's not a secret, and she just needs to do a lot more. And this is another one. Well, she's a closer, but I don't see how I'd be able to pick her over another closer like Dreamlift when Dreamlift has shown clearly more in her races. The 9 is the other Southern California shipper, Awake at Midnight for Doug O'Neill. 1 win in 2 very close seconds in graded stakes company. A horse I like a lot here. She's bred to go 2 turns. We kind of saw her be able to do it in the Jimmy Durante 2 starts ago, where she lost by a nose in that spot. Galloped out really strongly, though. And I do think she's better on dirt. Broke her maiden on it, and that maiden win was impressive because she beat Adair Manor, who is one of the top 3-year-olds in the country at the moment for Bob Baffert. And it was a half length back to Under the Stars, who is now a graded stakes winner. Beat Awake at Midnight in the Santa Ynez. But, if you can beat those 2 kinds of horses on debut, you're clearly talented. I mean, are you better than them? Maybe not, given the circumstances, but you clearly have a lot of talent to you. And then I mentioned I love the second on the grass, and I love the Santa Ynez as well, where she ran a good second behind Under the Stars after chasing a very quick pace in the early going. And I think getting back out to a route of ground, this time on the dirt, really puts her squarely in the conversation here. She's a sharp workhorse. She does a lot of good things there. I love the trip she'll be able to sit because she'll let the speed go, and then she'll probably set up shop in a good 3rd or 4th, a length or 2 off the lead, and get first run in fairgrounds. Being closer up is generally better, especially the last few years. She's really strong on speed figures, especially that last race. Doug O'Neill, track record of winning races like this. He won the Fairgrounds Oaks with Landover C a couple years ago, and obviously I think more in our minds was Hot Rod Charlie winning the Louisiana Derby last year. So positives on top of positives on top of positives. You could question, I think you can question what she's raced against outside of those Baffert fillies I touched on, but that's really hard because she's been close. It's not like she's getting beaten 6 lengths. She is throwing it down with some of the better 3-year-old fillies in the country. The 10 is California Angel. Feel-good story of the Breeders' Cup last year, or at least heading into it after she won the Jessamine for trainer George Leonard III. But her dirt form is just bad. I mean, it's really, really bad. I thought her third in the allowance at Churchill was decent, but even if you watch it, she was beaten 6 lengths for one, and two, she just never looked really comfortable. And I thought that was even more so shown in the untappable last time out. Now she has to come off 2 months. She does put the blinkers back on. I don't know if that was something that really messed with her, but I just think she's a cut below on the dirt. Just it doesn't make a lot of sense. She hasn't worked bad on the surface, but her two races have not suggested to me this is a spot where she can win. One, maybe the blinkers help her, but I highly doubt that'll be the case. And finally, the 11, Hidden Connection, your likely favorite come post time. Very impressive winner of the Pocahontas last year, in addition to her maiden win. Two really nice races, won by 16 and three-quarter lengths in total, those two. And in Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, it was over at the break. She broke poorly, got shuffled back to almost last early on, and just never looked comfortable. She looked beaten from the beginning. In addition to Echo Zulu getting an easy lead, it was over. But she was well bet in there. Went off at about 7-2 on that day. And, it's hard to say because it's a big what if, but she probably would have ran better with a cleaner trip. She has the most consistent numbers in here. I will say, though, I do question. I think the layoff is one thing I'm a little concerned about because she hasn't ran since early November. And the other thing I'm concerned about is really what she's beaten to this point. I thought her maiden win, as impressive as it was, that came at Colonial Downs, and the horses behind her, not graded stakes caliber. The Pocahontas, there hasn't been much production out of that race. All in all, Goddess of Fire, who was a neck away from finishing second in that good effort, we touched on her. She hasn't done a whole lot. And then Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, I can't really say she lost that because of her competition, but you obviously wish she would have ran better despite the circumstances. I don't really love the post. I think she does sit a good stalking trip in here, probably, around the same trip. Awake at Midnight will want to sit, but I just have questions about her. I'm a little less confident in her than I am someone else in this race, so I'm not going to be picking her on top. That horse will be Awake at Midnight. I love what she's faced. I love going this distance over this track for her. I love the trip that I think she'll get. Mario Gutierrez, people have given him grief over at times, but I think this past year of riding has genuinely been the best I've seen from him on a day-to-day basis. He's done a lot of good things in the past year. I think he's really coming into his own as a rider, in my opinion. So I think he'll be able to work out a good trip. I think Hidden Connection runs a bang-up race, but just not having one in her, a start in her, I should say, coming into here does concern me a little bit. So I just have to be against her here. And then I think, I mentioned Dreamlift is one you should probably use underneath. And I think it's a horse that'll take money that I think would be good to fade would be the one. Lacrete, I think that two good races, but I think the tougher the competition will be getting here, I think she'll run a weaker race in here. So a lot of ways you can go. It's very deep, very competitive. We're going to have one horse confirmed in the Kentucky Oaks starting gate after this. I think it'll be Awake at Midnight, but obviously big name and Hidden Connection to the outside. So a lot of fun racing coming up this weekend. Hope you enjoy it. Good luck to anybody playing them, and we'll see you next time on Racing Rundown.